And with that, I will now introduce Laura Jones, our Executive Vice President and Chief Strategic Officer at CFIB. Thank you, Laura.
Thanks, Alexa, and good afternoon, everyone. It's nice to be back with you all today. For those of you who have joined us regularly for those webinars, and for those of you who are new to our webinar, welcome. I'm joined today by my very capable colleague, Corinne Pullman, and another capable colleague, Rachel. Rachel's a business counselor, and Corinne's kind of our resident expert in all things to do with Ottawa. We also have some special guests today from distantly, and I will introduce Susan and Daniel and Jennifer in a moment. And then we have some guests to talk about some student programs today from the University of Waterloo and also from ICTC, and Corinne will be introducing them in a moment. But before we get to that, we will go to the next slide. And many of you have seen this slide before, but I just like to remind everyone that we're keeping our information up to date, and sometimes hourly, definitely daily, as we're getting updates from government and getting answers to your questions. So please check our website regularly. And of course, our helpline is on the screen, that 1888 number, and I will put it up again at the end of the webinar. But you know, our counselors like Rachel from across Canada are here to answer your questions, so feel free to give us a call. I also just wanted to make a note that our next webinar is July 23rd. So for 16 weeks, we've been doing these webinars weekly. We're going to take a bit of a break next week, and then we'll be back on July 23rd with a special guest who is an employment lawyer, as on our helplines, we're getting a lot of employment-related questions, and we found someone who's been a helpful resource to us, so we thought that would be helpful to you. But we will continue with also our regular What's New updates. And so if we go to the next slide, I'll just talk a little bit more about today's webinar, after I get to my favorite segment, which is the quotes. As you know, every week I put up a few quotes, which is to provide some inspiration to lean on. And so here are the quotes for this week. The two at the top are from last week's as well. I just liked them so much, I use them again. Especially the courage doesn't always roar. Sometimes it's the quiet voice at the end of the day saying, I will try again tomorrow. I think that's great wisdom to lean on. But I also like, when the storm has passed, put your energy into rebuilding your life. Don't waste time looking back, because I just thought that was kind of great as I was looking around this week. So now let's get to, now we've got our inspiration, let's get to the key topics we're covering today. So as usual, Corinne and I are going to do a quick tour of what's new, preview of coming attractions. There's not a lot to report this week, but actually that's helpful in some ways because we have some guests, and we've thought about introducing you to some of the great people we've been talking to, and one of them is from distantly to talk about crowdfunding, and I've been talking to you about our Small Business Everyday campaign and the other great things happening across Canada to support small business. And this is one I thought really deserved a bit of attention, particularly for those businesses on the call, and we get those tough questions, there's nothing, what is there for me? Government's not doing enough, or government's not doing anything that I can access. And this is something, not government, but it is something that I think may be helpful for some. And then, of course, student placements was another topic that was coming up a little bit, what's happening with students. So we thought we would go into that as well. And with that, I will go to the next slide. I'm going to run quickly through some of our content that we update every week. 57% of businesses fully open. You can see the breakout by province and also by sector. And as you know, this is feeding that regular dashboard that we're getting to politicians. But even though over half of businesses are open, we know only 1 in 3 of you are back to regular staffing, and only 1 in 4 of you is back to normal revenues. So we continue to monitor that closely as part of the recovery. If we go to the next slide. Corinne, this is where I pull you in and we talk about what's new.
Great, thanks, Laura, and good afternoon or good evening or good whatever the time of day it is for you, and welcome back to our webinars. As we talked about, unfortunately, was not a lot new this past week. There was a economic and fiscal update yesterday that the minister announced sort of the fact that the deficit in Canada has gone up to about over $350 billion or something along those lines. Which was not a surprise, given, of course, the immense spending that has had to go on in the last several months in order to keep the economy going to some degree. We were hoping to hear some announcements around the Canada Emergency Wage Subsidy, but we didn't. And so we're still waiting to hear about what the government plans to do and what the new criteria will be for the Canada Emergency Wage Subsidy for period 5 and 6. We are already in period 5. It began last weekend on July 5th. So we are getting very impatient about when the government is going to give us some details. I already had a question from one of our folks here today that are attending the webinar asking what's happening with this criteria. I wish I could tell you more. I'm hoping it will be imminent. Unfortunately, we still don't have any details. So the good thing was, as part of the fiscal update yesterday, the government did set aside more money for the wage subsidy and did indicate that they are going to be making an announcement imminently in regards to what the new criteria are going to look like, but it still hasn't happened. So I wish I had more news to tell you. What they have done, though, is that you can now apply for period 4. That's as of yesterday, the applications for period 4, which is from June 7th to July 4th, is now able, so you can now apply for that particular period. Again, just wanted to mention the expansion of the Canada Emergency Business Account to those with payroll under $20,000. There's been lots of questions around this for those folks that are now eligible using this particular stream of the program, especially around the non-deferrable expenses side. Just a reminder what some of those expenses could be. That includes wages, rent, equipment, insurance, property taxes, utilities, recurring debt payments, etc. There is a web link there that you can go to. They are supposed to be updating it with more information. I know there's some frustration out there in trying to go through the process of application, so please let us know if you're having those problems. Send it to CFIB-FCEI. We are trying to collect that information and build a bit of an arsenal to go back to government and say you need to fix these things because we know that it's not really working well for everybody who's trying to get through it. The most important thing, though, to know about those non-deferrable expenses is there is an obligation for you to have had some kind of contractual or legal obligation to pay those expenses prior to March 1st in order for you to have them as part of your application for the entire year of 2020. Laura's coming back on, so I don't know what that means.
No, I'm just anticipating the next slide.
Okay, moving to the next slide. There you go, Laura. Over to you.
See, that was good anticipation, right?
Good.
Yeah, so no updates, unfortunately, on the CECRA program other than the updates that we gave you last week, which is that it is extended to the end of July. As Corinne mentioned, with the economic update from the finance minister yesterday, we were kind of hoping for more in the recovery space, and you'll see that CFIB's reaction to the economic statement was sort of all around that, like, okay, but we really need to help businesses recover. We did get some numbers from how many businesses have been helped by the program. So 29,000 have used the CECRA program. And, you know, the big news here is that's a very, very small fraction of the money that they allocated. It's about 10%. But the other thing I wanted to highlight is last week I talked about how when we talked to the CMHC, they were saying they expect many of the bigger landlords to have waited and will now apply for the program. And in yesterday's economic statement, they said they expect another 25,000. And Corinne, you were saying our landlord in Ottawa, for example, who's one of the big landlords, just now sent something to us saying, are you down in revenue? Do you need the support? So look out for that. Particularly if you have a bigger landlord, there's a bunch of them that are now just getting onto the program. So I just wanted to kind of flag that. The rest of this, I'm not going to go through in any detail. If you have questions, you can certainly put them to me, and I'll get them to you in the chat function. And the slide deck is available, but I want to make sure we're leaving lots of time for our guest speakers. So let's move to the next slide.
Yeah, so I just wanted to. Yeah, so I just wanted to touch quickly before we go to our guests. As a reminder that the GST and HST deferral did end on June 30th. However, if you are still not able to pay your GST or HST, you can contact CRA and they will work with you on what they call a taxpayer relief program and potential payment plan to help you pay that back without incurring interest or penalties. And what we've added this week is what you have to do in order to do that. So you can apply online through your My Business account, and you have to fill out the form, and those are the links to those forms to get that ball rolling should you need it. So I just wanted to make sure that we had that extra information for you if you want to be able to take advantage of this fact that they are providing a bit of a leeway for those folks who aren't able to pay as of June 30th. All right. We did want to just give you a bit of an update on what CFIB is still advocating for. This actually came from a previous webinar participant who asked if we could know what you are still pushing for. Well, there's still a lot on our plate. There's still a lot that we're pushing for out there. As Laura just talked a little bit about, rent relief is still high on our agenda. It's something that we still want to make sure government addresses because so few businesses have been able to access the SECRA program. So it's definitely there. We want to do, and part of that is expanding an emergency business account loan to a larger amount. It's not just the 40,000, but maybe it's 60,000, maybe to a higher forgivable portion as well. Of course, having the wage subsidy expand to more businesses, hopefully through this criteria change that's coming, there'll be actually more businesses able to access it. We want to make sure that we're moving people off of the emergency response benefit into jobs, potentially through the wage subsidy, and ultimately unsubsidized employment so that we can get everybody sort of off the system in a gradual way. We're also really worried about the coming tax increases come January 1st. CPP is supposed to go up, carbon tax to go up on April 1st of next year. We want the government to start signaling that these may not happen, given that, you know, the worst thing you can do when people are struggling is increase payroll taxes. And so we want to make sure the government is thinking about these potential tax increases that are on the books and maybe looking at deferring them for a little while. And of course, we want to make sure we reduce red tape. That is still a big one on our agenda, one that doesn't cost a lot for government to do, but can be super effective in helping businesses get back up. And I'll leave the last line to you, Laura.
Yeah, so the last one is also getting more customers through the door and really getting that message out that customer support is critical, that sales are critical to businesses right now. And of course that our Small Business Everyday campaign is about that. If you haven't checked out our website, check it out. We've got lots of people saying they are taking the challenge and they are doing more local shopping. And this is also to amplify the other great campaigns out there. So, you know, for example, RBC right now has points campaign and where you get extra points if you shop at retail or restaurants, and you can redeem your points also have more value. So consumers can go here and find out about all those great programs. And one of those great programs is the Distantly program, and this is where I'd like to introduce our colleagues here today from Distantly. So, and I don't think they have the ability to share their camera. We were looking at the technology earlier, but we have Susan MacArthur and Daniel, who are co-founders. Oh, and Jennifer, who is the CEO. So Jennifer's able to share her camera, so that's great. And so I'm going to turn it over to you guys to talk about this program and give business owners. And really, what we're doing today is a little taste. And so what we might do is a deeper dive webinar where we're going into more details. But we just wanted to give our members a little bit of sense of what this is about. So over to you, Jennifer, and team.
Great. So, you know, maybe I'll just jump in. It's Susan MacArthur here, and I'm coming to you from steamy hot Quebec. And I thought what I'd do before Jennifer jumps in and talks about crowdfunding and the platform is just give you a little context of how Distantly came together. So I'm shared on the phone on the call with my co-founder, Daniel Spataro. And Daniel and I very early on in the COVID pandemic realized that small businesses were going to have an issue with cash flow and funding. So we put our heads together and thought about a unique, easy way for small businesses to connect with their communities who obviously want them to stay in business and enable those communities to provide direct capital to the small business platform. And this is known in the tech business as crowdfunding. So Distantly really is a community crowdfunding platform. And we've had such great uptake from businesses who have used this to their benefit that we've recently brought Jennifer on as our CEO. So what I'm going to do now is pass it over to Jennifer to kind of take you a little bit through our presentation. So thank you very much for your time and attention.
Thank you so much, Susan. And I just want to make sure everyone can hear me okay. I know I was having some mic issues earlier during the testing.
Loud and clear.
It seems like you're good.
Awesome. Okay. So hi, everyone. I'm Jennifer. I'm the CEO of Distantly. And I just wanted to start out by, thanking you guys so much for having us as your guest speakers today. I think there's a ton of opportunity for Distantly to work with all of the CFIB members. So to the members that are on the call today, thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to join us and to listen a little bit to what we have to say. I wanted to start by spending some time just setting the stage really simply around what crowdfunding is and what some of the benefits are. And so crowdfunding at a very high level, it's literally a method of raising capital through the collective effort of friends, family, customers, and investors. So it's really a unique way to get fundraising and funds into your business that's open to pretty much anybody that is willing to support your business. If we could move to the next slide, please. So the benefits of crowdfunding are, there's many of them, but I thought we'd focus maybe on just 3 for today. And the first one is it's immediate cash flow. And so for the most part, amongst like all of the different platforms that are out there, and we'll get into some of them in a minute, and they're increasing in popularity, and they're increasing in kind of what each of them are offering the businesses or projects that are on the platforms. But nonetheless, what's common throughout all of the crowdfunding platforms is a very immediate cash flow back to the businesses that are actually on these platforms. And typically, it's a matter of a couple days for funds to actually reach the businesses' bank accounts. So that's one of the awesome benefits of crowdfunding for sure. The second one that I really like personally is it's non-dilutive. And so what's interesting about raising money through crowdfunding means is that it's entirely different from going through more of a investor kind of community. So you're not going to be giving up equity in your business. You're not going to be disrupting your ownership structure. It's completely non-dilutive. And then the last part, which is great, is there's no interest associated with it. Crowdfunding is not a loan. It's nothing that a bank is providing you. It is literally just funds in your bank account. Next slide, please. So here are some of the common crowdfunding platforms that are out there. You guys might have heard of GoFundMe. You might have heard of Kickstarter. Kickstarter is kind of synonymous to the tissue industry the same way Kleenex is. So it's kind of the main one that's out there on the market. Every single one of them, as I kind of alluded to before, they focus on maybe a different industry or a different type of business, but nonetheless, there's a crowdfunding solution out there for every single business. Typically, and they range a little bit, but they all have slightly different economic structures. For the most part, they tend to take 3 to 5% of the total funds raised, and then a handful of small percentage transaction fees. And this is, I guess, why I wanted to put Distantly kind of front and center, because we structured our platform much differently, and we'll get into that in a little bit as well. And so you can see there's a number of different platforms out there, and we can address kind of any questions you guys might have about them specifically in a little while. And so specifically on Distantly, if we move into the next slide, thank you. And as Susan mentioned, we really got this started as a community crowdfunding platform, and we've bolded those words for a very specific reason. We really want this to be a true community kind of platform and business that we're building, and it's something that we firmly believe is like really, really paramount as we all look to kind of be this cohesive unit and get through COVID and all of these curveballs that have come our way in 2020 together. And so Distantly was launched during the very beginning part of COVID-19 to financially support local businesses during lockdown, and then eventually as they started to reopen through the various different phases. And through distantly.ca, so your customers, your friends, your family, anyone that is interested in your business can support your business during this time right now and also into the future. And so this is something that we want to make very clear that even after COVID, Distantly is not going anywhere. We're going to continue to grow our platform and continue to be there to help you as a platform business. So whether you're a restaurant, a bar, a gym, coffee shop, fashion retailer, salon, you name it, you can come onto the platform. And this is also why we thought the working with CFIB was particularly advantageous, just because of the diversity in businesses that CFIB has within its membership base. Next slide, please. So very quickly, how it works, you go to www.distantly.ca, and when you get to distantly.ca, you're going to see a little button in the very top right that says Add My Business, and the whole process takes less than 5 minutes to set your business up. And as I said before, within a couple days, you have funds flowing back to you that came into the platform to support your business. And one thing that's really different about our platform compared to some of the other ones that I listed a few slides prior is that all of the funds flow back to the business except for third-party transactions, and we use Stripe. And Daniel on the phone will be able to address any questions you guys might have about connecting your bank account. So if we go to the next slide, there's a very quick and intuitive onboarding process where you have to type in what your business is, roughly where you're located, and then a little bit of banking information as well, so that we can make sure that the funds immediately get back into your account. Once that's done and once it's verified, you're on the platform, and it's as simple as that, and people can start to make financial contributions to your company. Next slide, please. And then what's great after that too is there's all of these little buttons built in along the way, so that you can share your business and your profile page with your online presence that you might have already. So whether that's through email, social media, any sort of newsletters or distribution lists, there's a handy little button that you can share with anybody that supports and follows you. So the next slide, thank you. So we wanted to, just provide a really quick overview of what we're all about and what this really interesting form of funding is all about that we, use as our foundation. We're going to be having another session in a couple weeks' time to go into a lot more detail about the platform and some of the things that we're doing in the future. But this all really, is built on supporting the small, local, and independent businesses across Canada. So we wanted to make sure we had a little bit of airtime today to get the message out there and really invite all of the CFIB member businesses to open an account on the Distantly platform. I wanted to leave a couple minutes. I hope I didn't talk too quickly, but leave a couple minutes for Q&A for either myself, for Susan, or for Daniel, the two co-founders of the Distantly.ca platform. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you so much, Jennifer, for that quick overview of what I think is just a terrific program. I know personally there were several businesses in my personal life that I was very worried about, and it was great to know. And I was super happy when they reached out to me. My hairdresser saying, "Hey, do you want curbside pickup?" I was super happy to be able to do something. But as a consumer, with my consumer hat on, I didn't really know how to help some businesses that were totally shut down. But I imagine that one of the things that people might find difficult about saying, "Okay, I'm gonna do this," is it's a bit different from selling something to one of your customers. You're saying, "Hey, I'm in trouble here, and I need your help." And what do you hear about that, and what's your answer to that? Like, I'm not that hesitation that I imagine some business owners would have.
Yeah, so Susan, do you want to maybe talk about one of the first companies that we had on the platform and how she kind of responded to that idea as well?
Sure. I think really the foundation, Laura, is that we all benefit from having our Main Street businesses open and vibrant, and they're such an important part of the community. And one of our actually, Stacy from Totem is a co-owner of Totem Gyms, and she was very early on and helped us shape the platform. And one of the things that she said to us, it was just so encouraging and inspiring for her as an entrepreneur who at the end of every day really only just had bad news and more things to deal with, that she could actually reach out to her community of customers and clients who really wanted to support her and really validated her business proposition. So she found the platform very easy and simple to use, unlike a lot of the government bureaucracy, et cetera, no red tape, and that's very much kudos to Daniel and his team. And then she just felt the affirmation of being able to reach out to her community, and the response was very positive. So, a little bit of a hesitation, but it's also a great way for you to engage your community. And I think you as business owners will be very surprised at how important you are to everybody's daily well-being. So we need you.
Well, and one of the things that I love about, having you involved in our Small Business Everyday, promoting you through our Small Business Everyday, is I've got all kinds of fun ideas for where this might go in the fall, where we've got other partners who are like, hey, could we do a contest? And maybe some of that could be money that goes into a favorite business on Distantly or something like that. So there's some great ideas, but I just want to get to a few of the questions I'm getting. I think business owners are a little bit incredulous that this is actually like kind of free money. Like, I'm getting a lot of questions here about how do I repay the funds? How is the money raised, that kind of thing. So maybe first to clarify that these are not funds that are repaid. These are like donations, really. So maybe just to clarify that. And then maybe to take that one step further, so I go to the website, and if you promise that it's 5 minutes, that's amazing, because 5 minutes I set up my profile, but then what happens? I mean, people have to then know that they can give to you, right? How does a business owner kind of amplify that? Hey, I'm on this site and I might like some help. Is that mainly through social media, or what advice would you have for business owners on that?
I can jump in on here, Laura. This is Daniel, one of the co-founders alongside Jen and Susan. One of the things we focused on when building the platform was making it easy for these business owners to amplify their pages once they are set up. And one of the things that we've done and we really focused on was embedding 5 social media icons within every single verified business page on Distantly. So if you go to any distantly.ca business profile right now, you're going to see those 5 icons, and they include things like LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, and more direct messaging platforms like WhatsApp and email. And what that allows people to do is share those profiles with their own community. So how it typically works, and what we've seen the most successful businesses do on the platform, is start with their own communities. So after they create their business page and they get it all verified with their bank accounts connected, it's really about driving that message forward to internal email lists, to existing customer communities, to friends and family, what have you. And then what ends up happening is those initial recipients of that page will decide whether they want to contribute. Yep.
Okay. So we lost Daniel, but you can still hear me. Can you still hear Daniel?
I could still hear Daniel.
Oh, I can't hear you. That's the problem. Okay, so I'm going to switch my audio. Just, Corinne, if you could take over the chairing for a moment, because I can't hear, for some reason, I can't hear the participants, so I'm just going to switch my audio.
Dan, you want to keep going?
Yeah, so just to clarify, you guys can hear me, right?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, I'm gonna assume everybody can hear me then. So just to close up this this part of the question, when creating the profile, as I mentioned, leveraging your internal email list to get out the profile to your communities, and then from there, your customers, once they find your business profile, can use social media share links to expand it and amplify it to their networks through 5 different channels.
Okay, great. Thank you for that.
The other thing to just add, Daniel said in terms of amplifying and reaching out to your community, Stacy at Totem Gym, she basically reached out to her community and said, listen, I'm having a really tough time with my employees, my trainers, they're really important to my business. I know you use trainer XYZ. I'm reaching out to you to make a contribution to my business so that I can keep my trainers employed and at the gym or doing online classes or what have you. So in terms of reaching out to your community, sometimes it's good just to have a very this is what I need to do, this is where I'm at, and just be very transparent and have, an open conversation with your customers and clients.
Totally.
Yeah, in this environment, candidness and empathy seem to go hand in hand, and everyone's extremely understanding of kind of what's required for businesses to survive and move forward, and that's what's been successful, frankly.
So one other thing that Daniel, I think it was on a conversation you and I had where this came up, or Susan, it might have been you who mentioned this, but that business owners can also use this for, if there's like a project that getting online, for example. So you don't have to be absolutely, on the verge of shutting your doors to use this kind of funding from it could be a big project that you want to undertake. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
I can actually take that one too, and this actually goes into the whole idea that we're not just here for a temporary period of time during COVID. This is Distantly's here to stay, and we're always going to be here for the best interest of the small, local, and independent businesses. And one of the things that we have been talking about is taking a bit of a project-focused approach. And so right now, the way that the platform is set up is it's pretty much wide open. If you set up a page for your business, people can make a financial contribution to your business for whatever generic reason. And one of the things that we think about, as businesses start to reopen and assume some sort of level of normalcy, is people are very likely to just start coming back into the store and just buying product. And so that whole idea of just giving money to the businesses, it's always going to be there. That's at our core, and we're never going to take that away. But we want to make sure there's still something for the future. And one of the examples that we've given in the past, and Dan, I'm going to steal this from you, is you can imagine a pizzeria that's on the platform, and right now, they have a generic crowdfunding page on Distantly, and any funds that are donated to them, they can use for whatever reason that they want. But you can easily also imagine that same pizzeria in a future state. Their doors are back open again, and they still want to improve their business and retain customers, and continue to offer new products and things to their customers. So now they decided they wanted to have, let's say, a new pizza oven that's a wood-burning pizza stove. And so they could, in the future, have a project, so to speak, on Distantly that helps funds for a very specific purpose. And so that way we have businesses that are still, they can collect donations for more of a generic means, but at the same time, they could also set it up in a way that's very project specific. And so that's going to be introduced very soon. So that's something that we're working on as part of our growth, as something that will be continuing on into the future.
Okay, great. So I've just got a couple more questions I'll put to you, and then we'll get the rest of the questions to you all in the question box. But a couple of people are asking, Bruce is asking, is there a unique or specific business model that qualify? And then Heather is asking about, what about companies that are consultants in a very technical field? Where do they fit in? So I guess, could you speak to sort of, are there any particular types of businesses that this is going to fit better than others? Or are you saying, hey, we think this could work for anyone?
Yeah, so I'll kick this question or this answer off, and then Daniel and Susan, feel free to chime in. We've tried to set it up in a way that it appeals to all businesses and all industries. We do have over 1,000 businesses already on the platform, and they really range in what they are, from consumer-facing retail shops to dance studios, to gyms, to salons, to little restaurants and bars. It's really quite a range, and I mean it was designed that way intentionally because we don't want to be excluding a certain category of small, local, or independent businesses. So in the case of, a consultancy service, it might be a really interesting opportunity to just add to however that particular business might be marketing themselves. Or in the case of, a gym, for instance, and that, they don't have a specific product necessarily to sell, but you can sell packages, or you can have packages of services that you'd be able to offer up onto the platform as well. So there's a few different things that we've been thinking about doing, but we definitely want it to be, agnostic as far as what kinds of businesses can benefit from coming onto the Distantly platform. And I think the last thing I'll say is if businesses have ideas for us as to what might be unique to their specific industry, let us know, because we're going to want to know how we can, offer something that's beneficial to them as well.
Great. Okay, well, I'm going to, typically what we do on these webinars is we get through the main content and then we go over a little bit. So we may come back to you for questions. In the meantime, you can answer some of them in the chat function. But I'm going to move us along because we're also going to talk a little bit about some of the student programs that are available. And so I'm going to turn it over to my colleague Corinne to introduce that part of the webinar. And I'll just remind people that we're planning another webinar with Distantly to do a little bit more of a deeper dive. So there'll be another opportunity there.
Great, thanks, Laura. And that was pretty interesting. We're going to have an equally interesting folks who are going to talk a little bit now about student placements and opportunities for businesses to bring students into their business. We've had a lot of questions, including some I've already gotten already, in regards to how businesses can bring student placements in, what the process looks like, and if there are obviously some subsidies to help pay for them. So Alexandria Chiasson, I'm sorry if I pronounce it correctly, is a National Partnership Coordinator for ICTC, and she'll explain what that is in a minute. And then Carolyn Lee is actually here from the University of Waterloo, but I can assure you don't have to be from Waterloo in order to take advantage of some of the programs that they have. So she'll be talking about that. So I'll turn it over to the two of you, and I'll come back near the end and we can have a bit of a chat.
Thanks so much, Corinne. I wanted to thank you and your staff for affording us the opportunity to chat with you this afternoon. I think it's a really important topic, and I think it's one that could definitely fill a need for a lot of independent businesses as we wade through the impacts of COVID-19. So I just wanted to let you know that I'm just going to go over a little bit of the overview of ICTC for those who are not familiar with the organization, and then we'll look at some programs and talent programs as well that I think could really impact it and make a difference for you. So ICTC has been around since 1992 as a sector council at the federal government level, and in 2006 we rebranded. We're known for the last 25 years or so for our research and advisory capacity to all levels of government, and most recently, and that's in terms of driving the digital economy. And most recently, we were looking at growth sectors in the digital economy, and we released a report in 2020 called Outlook 2023. And in that particular report, we looked at high growth sectors and what the talent is going to be required in order to drive the digital economy based on those sectors. And as a result of that research, we typically build our capacity and our programming around that. So we've become not only known for our research, but certainly we've looked at now programming that's going to be able to help businesses, and we typically partner with universities, businesses, and students on the ground. So what you see on the right-hand side actually is just a snippet of the research projects and reports that we've done and put out in the last little while. And I encourage you, there is an email address and a website at the end of the presentation. Just go online and see if there's anything that sort of grabs your attention. Just to, information's power. So there's a couple of interesting things there. Just talking about, next slide, please. Just talking about capacity building. The biggest one, our bread and butter at ICTC, which is Information Communication Technology Council, by the way, in case the acronyms are running fast and furious in this particular sector. But Will Digital is our program that is a work integrated learning program. It provides employers up to $7,500 or 75% of a wage subsidy to hire students in technology sectors, ICT sectors that are really going to help you on the ground with your business, and particularly in these times when it's been a challenge to get either up and running or to continue moving your business along, or in fact as a survival mechanism. So these students are from post-secondary universities. Regardless of programming, we will fund the wage subsidy. There's some eligibility requirements, and as we go along, we'll talk about a few of those eligibility requirements. But I'm just going to give you a quick overview in terms of what's available to you and how you can actually access the program. Just next slide, please. So the second generation of our work integrated learning program that we've developed based on actually the research that we've done over the last couple of years, and actually from data and feedback that we've collected from employers. And the reason that we're looking at a micro-curriculum model that's actually integrated into our work integrated learning program is that it's the second generation of the work integrated learning, so it's a more meaningful process for both the company and the student. But it also gives a better alignment between the theoretical and the practical skills that students have acquired in university and up to that point, and then when they hit the ground running in a job placement in the high growth sectors that we're looking at. And the models that we're developing and are under development at the moment, just the next slide please, are these. So we've developed models in FinTech. We actually launched it operational as of May 2019, and the third cohort will actually go through that FinTech model, which is integrated into the work integrated learning program. The other four are under development: intelligent retail and commerce, which may be of particular interest to a number of businesses on the line. And that would actually give, integrated within their job placement, the students the ability to come online and to self-direct a micro-curriculum that is going to fill in some of the gaps. What we've been hearing from employers is that students are fantastic in terms of the that they have when they come to a work placement, but they sometimes lack some of the softer skills or the job readiness skills that are really important in terms of productivity and actually being able to help the business and to learn from the business and to take advantage of being in a business culture. And so the intelligent retail and commerce model is going to be launched in September. I'm actually looking for companies now who are interested in hiring a student based on that particular model. So if those of you, and we can talk a little bit more about this in the question and answer period, but if there are companies now who are looking, and maybe it explains it a little bit more in the next slide, if you just want to move on to that one, please. Thanks. Some of the value propositions clearly for getting involved in not only the WIL program, but certainly the model aspect of the WIL program, which is again an upgrade in terms of the work integration. The value propositions are pretty clear for the companies and the feature benefits. So you actually get a student for a 4-month period to come into your business, or in fact, they can work from home and they can be utilized as a change agent. So for instance, if you're thinking about a pivot in terms of your business model, or you lack some websites or ability to get online, if it's really critical for you that you've always run it a certain way, and then COVID-19 arrives and all of a sudden everything is difficult for you to move forward, then the student can come in and sort of use their technical knowledge and their skills to get you on an e-commerce platform, potentially build a website for you, look at supply chain and some inventory, customer preferences, that type of thing, which will all be discussed, in fact, with the intelligent retail model. The ability for a business to pivot is really critical at this juncture, because a number of businesses and missions and models have sort of not held up well during COVID-19. And so it does give you an opportunity now to bring in a student and look at some of those things through fresh eyes and the latest knowledge. Of course, they've been learning within their program for quite some time, and so that they'll bring another perspective to you. You can also use them as an augment or a bridge to your workforce if you've not been able to rehire at the level that you need to serve your clientele. This is an opportunity for you to get a wage subsidy to bring on a student and to sort of make that the bridge between bringing on your employees full time, or in fact using them to pivot your business. And it's really important to sort of build your culture of talent in order for you to survive, quite frankly, and to thrive going forward. And so this gives you an opportunity to do that. From the student's perspective, it's really important. The second generation of work integrated learning is a much more meaningful experience. And in fact, what they do is they're actually helping companies survive the hands-on and the alignment between the technical and the job readiness skills is really spectacular when it comes to the second generation of work integrated learning. It just gives them more information in terms of where they'd like to be going forward in picking a pathway. And that's it. I mean, it's a very, as I said, it's a very quick overview of ICTC. and the WILL program, it does allow you to have a wage subsidy that may be a bridge for you in terms of both your resources and your talent while you get back on your feet. And Caroline Lee, actually, from University of Waterloo, so if I've been pronouncing that name wrong, is going to fill in some of the information for you around how to actually access students and what needs to be done there.
Thank you, Alexandria. Very pleased to be here today. You know, in co-op in Waterloo, we're also very pleased to be partnered with ICTC on various projects, and very glad to be able to give a very brief overview of our programs and how to access students and what kind of resources we've developed in response to COVID as well to assist with small businesses. Next slide. So just out of the gate, what I really want to talk about is hiring digitally skilled co-op students to advance your business. And we know that a lot of small, medium-sized enterprises are facing hiring challenges right now, including finding and funding new talent. And if you're overwhelmed with that transition to a remote or digital workplace or struggling to move your organization and business to a virtual platform, the University of Waterloo co-op students really do have the skills in place to assist with small and medium-sized businesses. Next slide. So I just wanted to kind of, like I said, a very high-level overview. How does the University of Waterloo co-op work? We have 4 and 8-month work terms available. They start in January, May, and September. Which really means there's an endless supply of top talent out of Waterloo. 4-month is the standard work term length. Some of our students do have 8-month availability depending on the year and the program that they are in. So when we work with new employers, which predominantly in my role, I'm working with organizations new to Waterloo and hiring co-op students for the first time, we really talk through those needs and whether a 4-month, 8 work term is a better fit and really how to advertise for that within our system. Next slide. So there's lots of talent to choose from. We do have over 120 accredited co-op programs, which means we have now we have over 8,000 students available every 4 months. We ask our employers to rate our students, and 95% of our students were ranked very good to outstanding by their employers. Now, while many of our programs, accredited co-op programs, do have embedded digital and technological curriculum, many do not as much. And in response to the global pandemic and a subsequent move to virtual workplaces, Waterloo students have now access to these newly developed specialized digital skills fundamentals courses, which introduce students to the concepts of digital marketing, web design, video marketing, e-commerce platforms. They were created to help our students support Canadian businesses during this time. And we've encouraged students to sign up for these at no cost. And we've had hundreds of students already register. And if you hire any of our students, you can also request that they enroll in any of these courses as part of your onboarding process if you so deem it important. Next slide. And so what can co-op do for you? Like we've mentioned before, fill your talent pipeline, whether it's you're looking to hire students to potentially hire full-time down the road, or it's just a short-term project you're needing assistance with. We do have students that can fill that need. You can also hire students at the experience level you need and get that help when you need it. And lastly, like Alexandria had been discussing, you can hire affordably now. There are subsidies available to really cut the costs of hiring co-op students. Next slide. And so how can we help? We have developed some new resources to really help small businesses right now. We now can provide some sample job descriptions to you with skills outlined for those, for example, those fundamentals courses, digital marketing, video marketing, e-commerce platforms, web design. We also have dedicated staff to assist through the whole recruitment cycle, interviews, onboarding, work term support. And I do want to mention, we are in Waterloo, but we actually have staff physically located in cities across the country who work with our employers and the students while they're on their work terms. So right from Vancouver, right through to the East Coast. Additionally, we've developed some new resources and support for managing co-op students remotely. It is a new challenge for many people to manage staff remotely, let alone, you know, the bringing on a new employee or co-op student and managing them remotely. And so we do understand that that is a challenge. And so we have some resources to assist there. And like I said, our staff are there to help as well. And lastly, advice and guidance on accessing funding. For example, ICTC's Will Digital Subsidy is a great source of funding. I also mentioned here the Ontario Cooperative Education Tax Credit. We do have a lot of employers in Ontario, but each province is quite a bit different, and there are tax credits available in other provinces as well. Our Co-op Higher Waterloo site has a fairly comprehensive funding area where we kind of break it down by region in Canada to let you know what is available to you with regards to hiring co-op students. Next slide. And so at that, I just wanted to give you my contact information. I think I might be the last person speaking today, so it's a good time to segue into questions. So thank you very much for having me today.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Caroline.
Carolyn, it's Carolyn, it's okay.
Carolyn, okay.
Yes, it's all good.
Thank you, and Alexandria, for sharing a little bit about the student co-op programs. Laura, is there something you want to say? I was going to ask a couple of questions, if that's okay, or yeah, okay. So I may want to bring you back a little bit, Caroline and Alexandria. Just a couple of questions I wanted to ask of you both. The first is, how does a small business kind of figure out how the student can fit into the business? So you talked a little bit about, going online and the digital component. And so how, what kind of help can they get in sort of setting up what that could look like for their business and helping them understand how they can use the student to potentially help pivot them away? Is there some resources that they can align, because they're not all IC or information technology experts. They know they may want to go into that space. They're looking for some guidance on how to sort of find the right person and how it would best. So what can you do to help them through that kind of journey?
I can take that first, Alexandria, if you'd like. Yeah, it can be tough. I work with small organizations with one employee right through to, really large organizations. And really where it starts is having that conversation. So really just having a one-to-one chat with someone in co-op like myself, where we just talk about the business and where the, what areas of strength the business has, and maybe some of the issues there could be. And through that conversation, sometimes a lot comes out. And what I'd mentioned just previously, the example job descriptions actually have been very helpful for businesses to read through, like, actually, yes, this is what I need, but we have so many. And so through those conversations, sometimes it's, piecing together, an e-commerce platform. Okay, tell me more about that. What more do you need there? And we kind of take a look at even what some other companies have maybe posted or recruited for has been really helpful. But then also talking to the business owners or the managers about also kind of selling themselves, and talking to strengths is very important when you're writing a job description as well, to say, how do you entice a student to come and work for you? What kind of environment are you, or mentorship, and what learning opportunities could there be? And there's a lot of learning opportunities with businesses, even if they're not maybe necessarily as technologically savvy as the student would be. There's a lot of learning that can happen there for the student about a business, not necessarily just the technology behind it. So really, I start with a conversation there, and we start looking through the multitude of resources we have online until we really find what fits for that business, for specifically.
And I just,
oh, sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, Laura.
I just had a really quick follow-up to that, and then Alexandria jump in, but this would be probably relevant for both of you. But some of the participants are asking, I'll ask Hillary's version of the question, but I'm getting quite a few like this. Is the digitally skilled program, does that apply to other locations than Waterloo? And I know you said this, Carolyn, but I just want to make sure that you're able to get that in. Can businesses in Alberta hire co-op students? And then another question is, how many students are we allowed? So you can both chime in on that, maybe.
Yeah, I just wanted to hop in on the last comment that Carolyn was making around the process itself, and sometimes I think the biggest and the most effort is put into actually making the decision to go forward and actually hire a student, because it's a decision that could really impact your business in a really incredible way. And so with ICTC, we're pan-Canadian, so we're in every province. And all you would do is actually go onto the website and you would apply for Will Digital subsidy. It's pretty straightforward. The process is not terribly onerous. You have to be technologically advanced in order to do that. You would go in and fill in most of the information that you would be familiar with. Start your profile as an employer, job description. Carolyn mentioned that any of those job descriptions for us in terms of eligibility really must include 3 areas of technology that the students would be concentrating on. But quite frankly, let's face it, any job these days requires 1 level of knowledge that's typically using a computer, right? So all you have to do is come up with 2 more that would pass the eligibility requirements for a digital job or a technology job or an ICT job. And then include that application in one, and then you put out your applications to various universities as Carolyn has mentioned, not only Waterloo, but certainly any university in your local area, all have co-op departments. Would be, and because of the interruption of COVID, there's some significant challenges of companies sort of taking away their placement opportunities to students just simply because they're not open and they can't do it, or students not returning to school. And so there's been a real disruption in matching. So I think you have a real opportunity now. You can go on today, in fact, you can, in a matter of 48 hours, you know that you have a wage subsidy of $7,500, and you can go forward. So, you know, it's simple, and sometimes it's complicated, making the decision to come online and then go from there.
So Alexandria, is there a limit to how many students are allowed? Because Dennis had that question about how many students are you allowed under the, and I'm assuming he's asking about the subsidy part of the.
Yeah, I mean, we have a number of, this is a huge program for ICTC, and we don't limit our numbers. What Employment Social Development Canada, or ESCC, funders at the federal level have done in responses to making flexibilities available to companies once COVID-19 started, them understanding that, you know, everything's been turned on its head basically. And so there's no requirement now for a net new position. And I'm not going to sort of get into net new because it's complicated, but if you had hired 2 here and you wanted to hire one, it would be 2, and we don't have to worry about any of that now. You can hire as many positions that you need and require. Some universities who have become eligible employers, Waterloo is a fantastic example, have thousands of placements available to them. So don't let that, you know, come in line. And email if you're concerned about where to go, and we have staff as well administratively who can guide you through the process, both in French and in English.
Corinne, are there other questions that you have that have been assigned to you around the programs?
Just one, and I don't know if you can answer this or not, but it has to do with, you talked about a 75% wage subsidy, and how does that interact with other grants like the Canada Emergency Wage Subsidy or potentially provincial? I think you touched on a little bit, but specifically there's some questions around the Canada Emergency Wage Subsidy and this subsidy.
Yeah, good question. Carolyn, I'm just going to talk about this because I know you mentioned this in tax credits in Ontario. What's interesting is that each province across the country has some provincial funding that they typically can use as a stackable funding source through the federal government funding that we have. What we can't do is stack another federal funding program, but what we can stack are provincial programs. For instance, in Nova Scotia, where I am, the Labour and Education Department of the provincial government has actually set aside money to make 25% difference for students so that the wage subsidy would be completely covered. There's also a number of provinces across the country who have allowed a $5,000 grant for small businesses to get up operational or to fill in the gaps to get back to sort of 75% strength to 100% strength. They could use that thing. But so I would encourage you, if that's the barrier for you, if that's the bottleneck, the other 25%, then to look locally, because there's a number of opportunities, could be through your Chamber of Commerce actually, to be able to make up that other funding.
Right. So just to be clear, you cannot use the emergency wage subsidy in addition to the 75% grant that you were suggesting, because that's a federal grant as well. So I just wanted to make sure that Jim got that detail, because that's what he was asking.
Yeah. Great. I'm so glad. I'm so glad you brought that up because that was kind of the question that I was going to raise as well. And I also wanted to ask Carolyn and Alexandria. I know the last time I spoke with Carolyn, she mentioned that the websites that your website weren't really up to date. Has that changed now? Okay. Because I know on my end, I've had a couple businesses call me and say, well, it doesn't allow everyone or students to go everywhere. So yeah, if you could just clarify that, that would be great.
We at Waterloo, our funding page we know is one of the top pages visited within our co-op, like Higher Waterloo site. It's very important for us to keep it up to date. I think the lag that we had discussed before, Rachel, was the lag between with any government program, the government announcement, and then the reality on the ground as far as actually implementation. And so we're now at the point where, yes, like Alexandria had said, 75% is a go. It's not just a government announcement that that hasn't been implemented yet. So we are actually looking every couple days to make sure all of our funding opportunities are up to date, the deadlines are correct, any new programs that open up, even provincially, we keep up to date. So we actually have a staff member on top of that. So for us, it's very important because it's such a highly visited page.
The challenge really from the government's perspective is that they've tried to do everything in their power to change and be flexible based on the needs of the business community. And so I think sometimes they're ahead of their heads in some instances. They released information and then we had to backtrack a service provider so that it was accurate. It was a bit of a challenge that way, but I hope, because things are changing daily, even on the hour for some of these programs. So I think now everything's up to date and everything should be online now in terms of accurate information.
Great, and Rachel, I'm glad to see you on the screen because I think for people who want, I know there's contact information here for Carolyn and Alexandria, but you are also in touch with these folks. So if people have questions on next steps with respect to the programs, I know they can call you and the other business counselors across Canada. So we typically go a few minutes over, but I think we're going to start wrapping up here. And I want to start by saying a huge thank you to our guests, Carolyn, Alexandria, and also our guests from Distantly. Thank you so much for joining Susan and Daniel and Jennifer to give us a little bit more insight into some of the other programs that are happening. I also do want to, before we wrap up, give a little shout out to one of the participants on the webinar has a birthday today. So Jason, happy birthday to you. These webinars have felt, I know we get lots of comments from the people who are joining us weekly, and it's felt like we've created a bit of a community here of business owners who are supporting each other. And so Jason, happy birthday on behalf of the other participants. And with that, I typically just give a few last words to my colleagues who join me on these webinars. Rachel, you haven't had as much to say on this webinar just by the nature of what we've been doing, but I'll get Rachel and Corinne back up to just give some final comments and call it a webinar. So Rachel, I'll start with you, then I'll go to Corinne. And of course, I've got our last slide here with our numbers up. And the slide presentation is on the side if you need it. But Rachel, over to you for a minute, and then Corinne, and then we'll wrap up.
Thanks, Laura. Yeah, I haven't really been visible on this one, but I've definitely been typing away at these awesome questions that I'm getting. But I just want to remind everyone on Laura's good tip about documenting everything and keeping that diary, that business diary to just remember everything for future audit purposes. Keep reviewing your policies, keep innovating and pivoting at this time, whether it's I'm hearing karate classes are being held in parking lots, or if you're just considering a different social media or e-commerce routes. Those are really crucial at this time to get you back on the upswing. And last thing I would just want to mention is take care of yourselves, stay safe, stay sane, and stay resilient.
I like that variation on the, I like the stay sane variation on that. That's a good one. Corinne, over to you.
Yeah, and stay resilient, I think, was another very good piece of feedback. So again, thank you everybody for joining us, and thank you also for the guests that joined us today. We do appreciate it, to bring a bit of sort of more specialized information to you today. I wish we had more to share on the federal government side, and I know there's still lots of questions, especially around the wage subsidy. I know it's frustrating, and we're frustrated too, and we have been raising it at every opportunity to let government know that this is having a huge impact right now, as it's keeping businesses from being able to plan because they don't know what the next segment's going to look like. So please be assured we'll continue to raise that, and we're hopeful that we'll hear something very, very soon. Just again, to let you know how important your feedback is, I've already made notes based on some of the questions we've had here today that I've been able to respond to of people's feedback in terms of what it is that could be improved or done better. And it's absolutely integral in the work that we do that we hear from you about that. So please continue to do that, and please continue to join us on these webinars as we go forward. Though we'll take a break next week, but we will see you again in a couple of weeks. So thank you.
Great, thanks, Corinne. And I'll just come in behind Corinne and Rachel on their fantastic comments and contributions. Corinne, you talked about the frustration that that we're feeling, that we know many of you are feeling, and I think yesterday's economic statement was a bit of a moment for everybody, because while there was some great backward-looking data and some very sobering numbers around deficits and debt, there wasn't much on sort of what's next in terms of the recovery. And so please know that we are making those points loudly and often on your behalf, and we continue to do surveys. For those of you who are filling out our surveys, we're also giving you a little break this week on that, because we've got so much great data that we have enough for our press releases for next week. So thank you for that. But if you've been filling in those surveys, you get a little bit of a break there too. And then I just will say that, just to go back to some of those early quotes, that leaning on others at this time, and I think this fits into the Distantly presentation as well, that, asking for help, looking after yourself, leaning on others, all of that is important, and it's really about the courage to carry on. And so that's one of the reasons I like that quote, that sometimes courage just looks like, kind of carrying on and doing the next thing that needs to be done. And I think business owners from coast to coast are doing such a fantastic job right now in the face of very, very difficult circumstances. So you have we think you're heroes, you have our respect and support, and we'll continue to be here for you. And we look forward to hearing from you one way or another in the next couple of weeks, and we'll be back week after next for the next webinar. And with that, we'll call it a webinar, and Alexa will end the webinar. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you soon.